Welcome back to a special edition of the Ed Show tonight. Rachel's back tomorrow night. Reverend Al Sharpton has taken on Rush Limbaugh. He's had enough of Limbaugh using the public airwaves to go on and on his blatant racist tirades like this. Take a listen.
This is a civil rights bill. This is reparations, whatever you want to call it. The objective is unemployment. The objective is more food stamp benefits. The objective is more unemployment benefits. The objective is an expanding welfare state. And the objective is to take the nation's wealth and return it to the nation's, quote, rightful owners. Think reparations. Think forced reparations. Obama's entire economic program is reparations.
That kind of racially charged hate speech has been spilling over into the Congress. Here's Republican Congressman out of Iowa, Steve King, taking a cue from the drugstore with his reparations attack on the black farmers bill just last week.
The fraudulent claims might be, well, Johnny, yeah, he was raised on a farm, but he wouldn't help his daddy. He went off to the city and became a drug addict, and when his daddy needed the help, Johnny wouldn't come and help his daddy. But now his daddy's died, and Johnny wants the $50,000 that comes from the USDA under this claim. We've got to stand up at some point and say, we're not going to pay slavery reparations in the United States Congress.
Wow. Reverend Sharpton made news on this program last month when he told me that he wants the FCC to step in on Limbaugh. He joins me now on more on this and just where that fight stands. Reverend Al Sharpton, president of the National Action Network. Reverend, I know you were down in Washington last week working on this. What's the latest?
We have a series of meetings going on, and we're going to see the FCC next week. We're not going to stand by and allow publicly regulated radio and television just go for marketing and promoting this kind of racism. Here's a man who calls the president names, plays a record calling him the good Negro, that has the former majority whip, or soon-to-be former majority whip, Jim Clyburn, as driving Miss Nancy, trying to play off driving Miss Daisy. Rush Limbaugh has the right to say whatever he wants to say. He does not have the right to do it, though, on publicly regulated airwaves. The FCC has a responsibility to set standards to say the public cannot be offended based on their race or their gender in this country and use federally regulated airwaves that they give licenses to that are very competitive, and the FCC is very selective based on standards.
So how would you monitor racist type talk on these radio stations that are publicly licensed by the FCC? How would you do this? They come back and say it's freedom of speech.
Very clearly, what they should do is establish what is the guidelines where you go over the top. And clearly, I think that Rush Limbaugh's statements would be over the top. You can't say in the name of free speech you can say anything you want when you're not allowed to do anything else you want on radio stations and on television stations. So we can't have standards everywhere, but when it comes to race. We're not talking about stopping free speech. We're talking about if FCC is very cautious and deliberate in who they give licenses to, who they let stations even get waivers to expand their empires, they can clearly say that part of that has to be that you're not taking part of the public and playing off against one another, and we give you a license to do it. So we're not telling Rush don't say what he wants to say. Say it at home. Don't get on publicly regulated radio and television that are selectively given licenses and do that to offend people because of their race or their gender.
Now Reverend, how serious are you about this?
I'm very serious.
It's the National Action Network. Are there any other organizations that may work in conjunction with you on this?
We're talking to all the civil rights groups, and next week when we get into Washington, they will announce for themselves. But let me tell you something. People said to us that we were not serious and we would not be successful when many of us went after the NFL to stop Limbaugh from becoming a part owner. We won that, and that was the private sector. I think the public sector has to be at least as accountable as the NFL and private owners were.
Holland Cook, radio consultant, writes recently that Limbaugh is labeled as too big to fail. You don't think so?
I don't think he's too big to fail. He thought he was too big for the NFL. Others thought they were too big. Imus thought he was too big. I think the bigger they are, the harder they fall when people get together and say, wait a minute, this is something that we should not tolerate in the public discourse in this country. Imagine the struggle the black farmers went through and Native American farmers, and a member of Congress stands there and tries to equate them to drug dealers. When do we step back off the curb and start having some decent dialogue? Whether we do it now or not, the government ought not give license for this kind of indecency.
Reverend, I think that racism is empowered on the House floor in this country and the Senate floor because of all the right-wing talkers out there. Give them all kinds of backup they need. Reverend, good to have you with us tonight. Thanks so much.